But this Parliament is on track to be the first government in history where living standards have contracted. The words of Sir Keir Starmer earlier while speaking at an event hosted by the economic think tank, the Resolution Foundation. Announcing this is Britain going backwards. The Labour leader announced that growth is essential, but spending taps won't be turned on.
If we are privileged enough to be elected next year, the quack diagnosis, the search for distractions and excuses, all of that ends. Because the defining purpose of the next Labour government, the mission that stands above all others, will be raising Britain's productivity growth, a goal that for my Labour Party will become an obsession.
An obsession? Well, Starmer's speech follows a report from the think tank which suggests that the UK has experienced 15 years of declining productivity and growth and flatlining wages. But while speaking at the same event this morning, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt argued that the evidence was an unfair representation of the economy as it was pre his autumn statement for growth.
The way in the long run that you can raise living standards is by raising productivity. Now, I don't blame the Resolution Foundation for the fact that they went to print days before the autumn statement, but we did introduce in the autumn statement the most competitive business investment release in the world, matched only amongst OECD countries by Latvia and Estonia, with full expensing.
I guess all kicking off about the economy, and joining me now is GB News' economics and business editor Liam Halligan with On the Money. So, Liam, first shots fired in the economics war of the next general election. But who's talking sense? Starmer talks great rhetoric, but is there any detail?
There's lots of positioning going on here, Martin, in terms of the economy ahead of a general election, penciled in maybe for May next year, maybe for October next year, but certainly by this time next year, I think we'll have had a general election, almost certainly. And what Keir Starmer is trying to do, he's almost saying to the left wing of his Labour Party, attack me, attack me. He was in the papers over the weekend lauding Margaret Thatcher.
Astonishing.
Crikey. And I know you've been talking about that on your show. Why is he doing that? To wind up the left of his party so they attack him, so then he can turn around and say to, the rest of the UK, you see, I'm actually challenging the hard left of my party because I'm on your side. Tony Blair did exactly the same thing in 94, 95, 96, and I remember it well. Let's see what Keir Starmer actually said. I've got some quotes here. He said about the economy, we are in a hole. There's no doubt about it. Taxes are higher than at any time since the war, none of which was true in 2010, which, of course, is when Labour lost the election. Never before has a British government asked its people to pay so much for so little, saying, we all know that public services aren't always the best. And then Keir Starmer went on to say, and you alluded to this earlier, economic growth will have to become Labour's obsession if we're to turn around the economy. He's sounding a bit like Liz Truss there, isn't he? This has not always been within the Labour Party's comfort zone. What he's trying to do, as well as attacking, as well as like winding up the left so they attack him so he can claim that he's different from them and he'll keep them under wraps, he's also trying to put in the public's mind the idea, if there is austerity, if there is low government spending after the next general election, it's not Labour's fault. You may remember, I know you're a student of politics, quite a few years ago when Labour lost in 2010, there was the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, my near namesake, a guy called Liam Byrne, Birmingham MP, and he famously left this note, "Dear Tories, I'm sorry, there's no more money." Right? And I think this is kind of what Starmer's trying to do. He's trying to say to the public, the economy's in the hole, it's because of the Tories, it's actually because of the global financial crisis in 2008. So we've never really recovered from that.
And all the spending during the pandemic.
And all the spending during the pandemic. And he's trying to get it into the public's mind and into the mind of journalists that they are getting a really bad inheritance. Tony Blair, in 97, inherited an economy that was in good shape. The public finances were in good shape after Ken Clarke's stewardship as Chancellor, and Gordon Brown could afford to start spending. That is not the case. In 2010, that year again, UK's public sector debt was about 650 billion quid. By the end of this decade, it's going to be 3 trillion. Crikey, 600 billion versus 3,000 billion. So the government won't have much room for manoeuvre, whether it's a Tory government or a Labour government. We're already spending about 10% of tax revenue on servicing our public debt. So I think this is quite a canny speech by Keir Starmer. And, the Resolution Foundation, it's run by a guy who used to advise Ed Miliband, of course, a former Labour leader. But I don't think, in fairness to him, and he's a decent guy, you could say that their analysis is particularly party-pre. When it comes to the numbers, they tell it as it is.
We're going to want to see some detail, aren't we? It's all fair and well saying the biscuit tin's empty, it was their fault, it's nothing to do with us, Governor, honest, even though, of course, it probably was, because Starmer's party backed all of these spending and the taxes and the printing of money during the COVID lockdown. So will it wash just to blame the other lot, or do we want to see some meat on the bone? What's your actual plan?
Well, as the election approaches, and as I say, it could be 6 months, it could be 11 months, we don't know, or anything in between. As the election approaches, I think that Labour are going to come under more and more pressure to reveal their hand when it comes to the details of their spending plans. But they say to me, I talk to Labour's top people all the time, they say to me, and understandably so, there's no way we're going to outline exactly what we're going to do until we publish our manifesto, because the Tories will just nick our best policies and put them in their manifesto. What I would say, though, is I know the Labour Party at the highest level is considering doing what Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, again, and they're advised by Peter Mandelson now, Keir Starmer, right? Lots of new Labour figures are knocking about. I know the Labour Party at the highest level are considering matching the Tories' spending plans. That means that, again, it will wind up the left of their party because they want much bigger government spending, but then they'll be able to say to the public, you can't say that we're spendthrift, we're the Labour Party, we're actually time for a change and we won't blow up the economy by spending too much. It's all about positioning and trying to change public perceptions of the Labour Party.
Superb analysis, as ever. Liam Halligan, always on the money. Thanks, mate. Cheers.